And we are live. Good afternoon. Welcome to Leadership Lives. I want to start off. Debra and I would like to start off with you thinking about the last time you were truly silent, not just quiet, but silent in a way that allowed you to actually think. In our world, silence is often treated like a defect, a space that needs to be filled immediately by an answer, a data point, or an AI-generated response. But when we lose the ability to sit with silence, we start to lose something much deeper, our ability to think for ourselves. Today, we'll be looking at the disappearing art of critical thinking and why our reliance on instant solutions might be costing us the very thing that makes us human and makes us leaders. So I'm joined today by Debra Carlson. Debra and I have been spending a lot of time looking at the current state of education, not just the curriculum, but the human machinery behind it. We are both coaches. Debra is an admissions coach and was previously a university vice president. I am an English coach and a biology coach. We see our students and even professionals who are brilliant at gathering information, but increasingly paralyzed when they have to synthesize it, or worse, when they have to face the unknown without a digital safety net. So Debra is here to help me unpack why we're trading depth for speed and how we might collectively reclaim our authority to think. So Deb, thank you very much for joining us today on Leadership Lives. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure. This is your second Leadership Live. How are you feeling?
I love it. The topics you identify that we should be focusing on are at a very high level and at the same time a very basic level. Things that we as educators and leaders and people who are learning and advancing in their careers need to stop and, as you highlighted, think about. Because in the current competitive environment that we're in and the instant need for gratification or information, everything at our fingertips through the internet or through artificial intelligence puts a pressure on us to respond more quickly than we perhaps should. And the importance of taking the time to really think and ponder the issue, the emergency, the question in front of us is a valuable and important skill that needs to be developed, enhanced, and emphasized. People need to be reminded fast is not better.
Yes, and reclaim possibly the way that when we're a little older, but this topic came out of a conversation that we had about what it was like to be in university pre-computer and having to write our essays by hand and having to go to the library and take out books and articles. We didn't have everything at our fingertips, and there was a certain kind of thinking that went on, we concluded, behind that. And that gave me the idea for this topic today, that conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago. And I think what we saw, right, what we identified is that we're seeing a paradox, that we have more access to information than any other generation in history. Yet at the same time, we seem to be losing our capacity for abstract thought. I mean, I know it makes us sound very old, but I think you agree with me that it's what older people always said. It's what older people always used to say to me when I was younger, that I wasn't able to think, But so at the risk of sounding, like an old person cliche, we think this is very important. And why do you think that this is happening? When we look at the way students and leaders panic when they encounter a problem that doesn't have an immediate pre-programmed solution, what does that tell us about what is happening at the moment with the mental models that we're currently operating with?
I'm concerned that people aren't stopping to analyze the situation and think for him or her or theirselves. We've seen it particularly in the last few years with college and university presidents facing protests on their campus. And the protests arise overnight sometimes and over a hot political issue. And they're a wonderful example of leaders forced to respond quickly and give answers and propose how they're going to advance forward in the situation. And it many times is something they have never faced before, or it's so controversial that there's no clear, correct answer and not sufficient knowledge about the population they're addressing. And you don't want to just pacify the population you're addressing. You need to think about what is the real answer, what is the right path, and why is it the right path. And so these time constraints and the pressure put on us by the media and publicity and the internet and the live streaming forces people to act before they've had the time to process and plan.
Interesting. Is it that we have forgotten how to ask good questions? Is that what you're saying? This stopping and asking questions, maybe even 3 or 4, identifying the most important ones in order to help us to make a decision. Is that what you think is being lost? Asking the right questions?
I think that's a perfect example. Not knowing what to ask, where to begin thinking about the solution or the action or the document that one wants to write should begin. What exactly is the problem or are the problems that we're up against, and who are the audiences, and what are their perspectives, and what are their experiences and the positions that they're coming from. I had a wonderful experience in law school where when we started one particular professor's exam, he forbid us from writing for the first half an hour. We had 3 hours to complete the exam. And in the first half hour, all we could do was think. If you picked up your pen, if you wrote down a note, you failed the course in that first half hour. And he forced us to just sit there quietly and read and I'm an avid note taker. That was so painful.
You weren't able to.
For me. And notes were not permitted. It was just time to think and reflect and digest the information and not feel compelled to put something on the piece of paper. And it was one of the most incredible learning experiences of my life. And I produced some of the best writing in my life by just having to that ability to relax and think and not worry that everybody else in the room was writing much faster than me, and I had to catch up with the masses.
Very interesting. And do you think maybe that we've delegated that first stage of the writing process to AI, possibly, that we're not doing that brainstorming ourselves? We're using AI to do the brainstorming, whereas we should be doing the brainstorming and then asking the AI to write it, maybe, or writing it ourselves and then asking the AI to edit it, for example. We're doing things the wrong way around, and we've lost the essence of what makes us us.
Exactly. Taking, for example, with college students or college applicants with whom I'm working, I will often have them do an informational interview. interview the CEO, or an inspirational interview a CEO of a company, interview a doctor, interview a lawyer, and find out what you're interested in. Ask them questions about their profession or their career and what got them there. And I realized after the first couple of times that they were going straight to artificial intelligence and saying, prepare me a set of questions to ask a high school junior, prepare me a set of questions to go into this interview. So the questions they were getting from artificial intelligence were at a pretty high level where they needed to understand the basics. So I told them, for our next session, I want you to draft the questions, what you think you need to know, and then let's discuss them. And then let's discuss how can we use artificial intelligence to enhance the organization, to add emphasis to areas where you didn't know how to dig deeper into the topic, but use your brain and your knowledge initially to get those thoughts on the paper about what you need to know, because artificial intelligence can't evaluate your intellectual level and your capability. Even if you tell them I'm in grade 11 or a senior in college, every individual has a different starting place when they approach a problem or a topic or an interview, and only they can start at their starting place. Artificial intelligence can't evaluate that from just a few words on a page.
Exactly. Unless you give it more background information, but then that is you doing that pre-work that we're talking about, But if you just ask it simply to regurgitate, it might give very good questions, but I suspect that the questions will be very generic, because it's going to take what everybody has trained it to do. So they're not going to be your questions. They're going to be kind of humanities questions, which I suppose for the admissions process is very, very serious, because, I suppose I'm talking about the personal essay, which is part of the American admissions process, where it needs to be your personal essay, where they see you and your personality and who you are and the things that are important for you. And if you ask AI to write that essay for you, well, then you probably won't get into college, because you won't stand out. You won't stand out enough, and they can probably tell that the essay has been written by AI anyway, right?
Absolutely. It comes out so professional, so sterile, so businesslike, and what colleges and universities are looking for, and what we as people, regardless of what position or situation we're in, are looking for, which is authenticity. What does the person really think? How do they really feel? What has their experience taught them, and what do they have to share with others? And artificial intelligence can't extract that from you. You have to think about it and process it. You may be able to enhance it a little bit, but you don't want to change your tone, your personality, your style of writing, where it looks like, a professional brief for a Supreme Court justice, sterile and professional and artificial, but beautifully structured and well written, but no feeling, no emotion, no authenticity.
So a little rawness, a little teenage rawness, let's say, a little 18, 19-year-old rawness in the personal essay there is preferable, because they can actually see who you are at 18 or 19, rather than, producing some kind of press release or something written by a PR agency.
Excellent comparison. I love it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so you have a question for me, no? I think.
Yes, I do. I'm very curious about the concept of filling void with noise, or filler language. When we teach, when we lead, people are often afraid that a pause may be misinterpreted. They may feel that the pause is incompetence or a lack of knowledge. What do you see when you watch someone actually lean into the science rather than that silence rather than trying to perform their way out of it? What have you observed and what have you learned from those experiences?
Well, I mean, in my personal experience, one of the best bosses I ever had would, if you asked him his opinion on something or for advice, this is why he is a person who I do ask for advice. I don't like normally being given advice. Nobody likes being given advice. But sometimes you ask for it and from certain people, and he's a brilliant person to ask for advice, because if he has a strong opinion and knows something about it, he will give you his advice. If he doesn't, he might channel you to somebody who does, and he'll send that person's contact details to you immediately. And then there are some instances where he will just say 30% of the time, I don't know. I'm removed from the situation. And it's incredibly reassuring to know. You get it 30%, I don't know at all. Let's talk about something else. I'd love to help you. 30%, well, I don't know, but you could ask why. And then 30%, he gives a very, very direct and strong opinion based on evidence. And if it's not based on evidence, it's based on his personal opinion, he will say that as well. And that's why he's a great person to ask for an opinion or a piece of advice from, because you know that it's valid, you know that it's been thought out. You ask him the question and he thinks, like that. And then he might say, I don't know. Sorry, I can't help you. But he's thought about that answer. And it is incredibly reassuring. And research, it's one of the reasons that made him such a great boss for me, and for many others as well. He's an inspiring boss for many people. And there is research to back this up, that in communication, active listening skills are the skills that people appreciate the most. It's not the performative stuff, which you and I enjoy, and we are talkers, but people don't. I mean, in certain circumstances, I suppose people do appreciate talkers. That people love a good story, they like a joke, sometimes you and I suppose have been invited or sometimes even paid to give speeches, or we have to as part of our jobs. But really, in day-to-day communication, what most people appreciate the most is someone who really, really listens and lets the other person talk. And if the other person has asked you a question, to actually really think about it. And I think people think that silence is a weakness, but I think it's a strength, actually. I think in practice, people see it as a strength from one. We might think internally, oh God, I look stupid here, but it's actually the opposite.
Silence is so very important. And I would add, in listening to the other person, being an active listener and brainstorming and asking questions that help the person dig a little bit deeper. You gave 3 excellent examples of responses that your favorite boss gave you. I would add a 4th, brainstorming. Let's brainstorm it together. Collaboration. Collaboration. I don't know the answer. Let's discuss it. Oftentimes in teaching, we use what is called the Socratic method, where we ask questions and we extract more information and we share information back. How do I solve this problem? Why does the problem exist? How did it come about? Why do we need to solve it? And in solving it, what do we see as the resolution? In helping my students and parents communicate with each other, I will tell the student or the parent, when you start a conversation with the other party, start by saying, why did you come to me? Why did you ask me this question? Are you looking for advice? Are you looking for someone to listen? Are you looking for a shoulder to cry on? Too often people want to leap in and solve the problem. And I discovered that many years ago with a student who came in and told me, a difficult situation she encountered, and she described it step by step. And in my mind, I wasn't listening. I was fixing her problem and making notes and solving it in my mind. And she got to the end and I was ready to give her advice. And I started to, and she said, "Oh, no, I've solved the problem." I wanted to come and just share the problem with you, tell you the steps I took and how I solved it, and then see if you had any additional advice for me. And I was ready to be right on top of it and give her the answers when I should have just been listening and absorbing the information and then waiting to hear what it was the person was seeking from me. And that's an excellent technique for parents and students, and I like to call them parents and their adult children, to help resolve communication and conflict issues, to learn how to manage their conversations and give what the other person is looking for instead of giving what we or I think they need.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I would add to that when we listen, I think the guiding questions that you spoke about are really important, and also letting the person go through that thinking process in front of us,
Mm-hmm. Asking them questions like,
or not necessarily even asking questions, just sitting the two of you with that silence, or possibly asking the question, and what else, and what else, and the person, because they're thinking it's the thinking process is unfolding, and if we jump in, or if we try to close the thinking process too early, then we might lose some of the best stuff.
And asking them, well, what would happen if? This is what do you think would happen if you took this approach that you're proposing? Are there different approaches you might take? And letting them quietly sit and think about alternatives, and not pressuring them into that fight or flight mode. For example, they feel like they're facing an artificially intelligence generated exam where they have to quickly organize their thoughts. And it's not just about the test. It's about whether they have the ability to structure an idea from scratch. And so tell me, Dara, how do you, or how do we teach people to build a mental muscle that survives when technology is taken away, so that they can be successful in the absence of technology?
I love that question, actually. I was going to ask it to you, but I love the fact that you've asked me. No. We planned beforehand. This is your question for me. This is your question for me. But in the original plan, I was going to ask it to you. And actually, now that I think about it, this question is very, very pertinent.
Two confessions here. We thought a lot in advance.
We did. Yes, of course.
The power, the use of the muscle.
Yeah.
The mental muscle.
Completely. And I think we've probably thought about this session, at least twice, if not 3 or 4 times before we actually did it, both together and separately, because you think about it and then you sleep on it. And then you get up the next day and your brain has processed all the thinking that you did the previous day, and then you're ready to think a bit more about it, But how do you build a muscle? Okay, now I'm one of these strange people that I started using AI about 3 years ago, and people thought I was deeply strange because I was one of the few people actually use it. People thought I was really weird because I was using AI for nearly everything. A student of mine, an Argentine student of mine, said that ChatGPT was my boyfriend, Nobody knew at all what I was on about, and I used it to design an exam to evaluate my AI skills. I learned more about using AI because AI gave me feedback on the exam that I generated to, etc., etc. So I'm a real AI person, and have been for about 3 years now, and it's integrated into my workflow. It's integrated into my learning. But getting back to your question, I'm also studying a degree, I think in health science. I went back to university because that's the kind of guy I am. 52 years old, never stopped learning. So I don't use AI at all, right? I mean, one, because it's against university policy, and two, because I run the risk of committing plagiarism if I use AI in any part of the process. And so when I write my essays, from top to bottom, from start to finish, the whole process is me. Now, I'm using AI every day and have been ChatGPT is my boyfriend. So I know an awful lot more about the world than I did 3 years ago, but that, of course, is me. So it's me coming to the essay, but the actual writing of the essay, it's all the assigned reading, and then I go to the online library, I download academic articles, just like in the old days, except it's all digital. I highlight what's interesting, what's not. I decide what I'm going to put into my essay. I decide on my particular perspective on this, or if it's not my perspective, the perspective of the person or institution that I'm describing. And it's been very, very interesting for me. That this started about a year ago, and ChatGPT was my boyfriend, but to actually put ChatGPT to one side and not use it at all and sit down old school, for one reason, because it's university regulations, but for another reason, because I wanted to give myself the challenge of writing things without AI at all, to see if I could still do it. I was able to do it when I was 18, 20, 25 in university, I wanted to see if I could still do it at 52. And the thing I think that maybe we haven't mentioned about writing, Deb, is that when you write, you think. Do you know what? Do you agree with me?
Yes.
Do you know what I'm on about?
I do.
The actual process, I mean, preferably by hand, but I use my computer an awful lot. But by actually getting your words out onto the page, your words, not AI's words, you're actually you're thinking and you're learning, and that's a big part of what education is about. And if I would delegate my thinking, or if I delegated my thinking to AI, I think I would remember less, and I think the quality of my learning and who I will be when I finish this degree will be less. I might not even be able to do the job. I want to be a health educator. It's going to be a relatively long road. I might do a master's degree in health science. But the thing is that I think if you delegate your writing to AI in that kind of environment, I mean, for one reason you can't, because it's against university regulations, and that's not unusual. Most universities do ask you to write things yourself. But I think I wouldn't be up to the standard of a top-notch health educator if I hadn't gone through years of actually thinking about these issues, reading, getting my ideas out on the page, and having my voice, Darragh O'Grady's voice, in these essays that I'm handing in, Anyway, so that's your question was, how do we build a mental muscle that survives? Well, it's literally every week I have to deliver 2 or 3 essays, and so it's in that weekly work, and you have to do it. And we are both working. We're full-time working, and I'm studying at the same time. And I've got the podcast. We've got the podcast. But it's in that time management and every day getting your words onto the page that you build that mental muscle. And it means that when you are, it's not only for writing, it's because you've done it through your writing, it comes through in your speaking as well, in the ability to organize ideas, as they come to you.
I want to go back to a word you used, which really hit me deeply and gave me a strong reaction. The importance of your own voice.
Right.
I work with an organization. I'm a consultant, and I work with different organizations. And one has asked that we use artificial intelligence to respond to meetings with people, and gave us the framework and said, put this advice into artificial intelligence, and then post your transcript into it, and then it will generate the message that should be sent back to the client. And I read the message, and it's not me. It's not what I would say. And in some instances, it's too much flattery. It's too insincere. If I were the recipient of the message, I would think
there's something missing.
I would be disappointed. I would be, really? She thinks I'm that wonderful, or she's fawning over me that dramatically. And I understand you can train artificial intelligence over time to better represent your voice. But in the end, it's your voice that needs to shine through. And the second point I want to make here is artificial intelligence is created by humans. And humans have only reached a certain level of thought. And so only that level has been put into the programming or the programs behind artificial intelligence, and relying on it too much erases original thought or ceases for original thought to develop and create new and better ideas or approaches to problem solving that we haven't yet developed to program into the system as part of the solution.
Yes, I totally agree. I think AI can be very creative mathematically. It's creative there, and there is AI generated music, which is great. I am a fan of some of the AI generated music. But I think where it may not help so much is in what you do as a coach, because it's got that emotional side, that it can't understand really what it is to be human. And so how can you coach somebody in a kind of a cookie cutter way when no human being is the same as the next one? We are not cookie cutter people to be guided, and there are cases where AI has given the wrong advice, right, to kids. I'm sure you've heard the tragic cases of it's not common, unfortunately, it's not common, but it does give advice which eventually ends up to the person committing suicide,
or other dangerous, engage in other dangerous or inappropriate activity. And I'm glad to say many people are very smart. But with that level of intelligence, you can also manipulate artificial intelligence, even though they're putting safety mechanisms in to try to identify people who may be suicidal or trying to engage in some kind of risky behavior. If the person knows how to rephrase the question or reframe the scenario, they can get that same information that the security wall or firewall tried to block them from getting by just reframing it and going around the borders of the firewall to get to that dangerous information that ultimately could result in something like suicide or doing harm to others, or there are a number of negative scenarios. We'll stop there.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And I think that is the danger of relying on AI as a coach, an AI coach. I mean, it may be able to coach you through very, very simple things, but regarding life coaching, for example, neither you or I are life coaches. You are an admissions coach. I'm an academic coach. But how could you? I mean, I don't think AI would be a very good life coach because it has never had a life.
Excellent.
Life coaches never tell you what to do, obviously, you know, they always ask you questions because it is your life. It is, you know, but I think the fact that the life coach has had a life and has been through everything that human beings, the difficult things that human beings go through, I think that a life coach is empathetic in a way that AI cannot be empathetic, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's false empathy, isn't it? That AI, it's this fawning kind of, oh, you're right, you know. It's your best friend because it never contradicts you, you know. But that's not what it means to be human. Human best friends are never that way, you know. They're never completely selfless. It's give and take, isn't it? And there's empathy going on between the two people. Does that make sense? Very, very theoretical.
It does, and not only empathy, but challenging each other as well. My experiences with artificial intelligence has not had it challenge me about my ideas or my word choice or the message I'm trying to send, and probe deeper into the situation. It helps open the situation up. Do you want me to research more on this area or on this area? But it doesn't ever say, stop. Should you be going there at all? Where a good friend would have the common sense to say, think about the negative consequences of going down that road, or think about other alternatives that might produce the same result in a different way, or a better or different result. And that's why the human interaction is so important.
Yeah, because a best friend wants you, and they want to help you to be the best version of you that you can be. Yes. And I don't think AI wants in that sense.
No, it takes you forward on the path that you're headed.
Yeah.
You know, I was playing with it today. I was curious about interest rates and asking about where one gets the best interest rates and giving it various scenarios. And it never once stopped and asked, why are you looking for money? What is the purpose you would use it for?
Right.
And a good friend would say, stop and tell me what your goal is, and tell me why you think you should be looking at it. And I was just doing it for fun, but it intrigued me that it never once challenged me on
it doesn't.
Wisdom of taking out a loan for any purpose. It just assumed it was the right conclusion and it was going to help take me to the next level.
I mean, it does challenge me, but you know why? It's because I ask it to challenge me.
Good job.
You know, I might give my opinion on something and ask it, or my theory about something and ask it. So pick holes in me, in my argument, in my opinion, in what I'm saying here. Where am I wrong, or where might I be wrong? You know, and that, so it does challenge me, but I have to ask it to do that, you know.
And that's where your original thinking comes in, and the use of your muscle brain, that you're not letting it rule you. You are teaching it to push you and guide you and help you make good decisions. And that's something I don't know that young people are learning. They're learning to just extract the information they're looking for, and they're not looking to be challenged. And it hasn't even occurred to them that there is value in being challenged. And that's something we need to be sure to communicate to people as they use these tools.
For sure. I mean, human beings, we only see the world 3D, and the world is 4D, isn't it? Or is it 6D? It's 4D, 4 dimensions. And we, as human beings, we only see 3D, you know. I cannot see, well, I can see what's behind, because I can see the camera. But normally you can't see, we don't have eyes in the back of our head. So, you know, what I'm getting at is that AI gives me that perspective. I'm asking it for that perspective that I don't have, because I can't see it, because I'm me, and I need to see. I need to get a different perspective on it. So, and it will do that. It's brilliant for that, because it will do it in a very scientific way, and we give you all the possible perspectives on an issue. It gives you a 360. Which no matter how good you are at thinking, it's, I mean, you can never see all sides of a problem. I mean, who can? Nobody can, I don't think. You know, so anyway, I have a question for you about theory, and we're being very theoretical and philosophical here, as always on Leadership Live. So I mean, you know, this idea that's floating around that theory is useless. I hear this an awful lot from teachers, actually. A lot of teachers who I've trained over the years say, "Oh, that's only theory," you know. And you took the theory of, oh, you mean the theories of how humans learn? That may be why your students aren't learning anything, because you don't know. You never thought about how they might learn. You just dive in and get going, you know. But I do understand what people mean that theory. I think theory is limited, isn't it? Our mental models are only they have limitations, don't they? But that doesn't mean that they're useless. What's my question to you? My question is, how do we convince? I mean, I'm assuming that you think that theory has its place. You know, I think
absolutely.
How do we convince people? Because normally, I mean, many people will certainly shut me down. You know, theory, it's just theory. You know, studies will say. I might say something like, you know, studies have shown that, you know, high sugar intake causes diabetes, and people say, oh, studies will prove anything. You know, they're only studies. What?
But that's where our most important information comes from, is developing a theory.
I mean, you're preaching to the converted. You're preaching to the converted, Debra. But how do we get that idea out there? You know, how do we convince people that thinking in an abstract way and you know, removing ourselves from reality for a while and actually, you know, thinking something through is of value, you know? It's actually very practical, because then you can apply the theory to your teaching, for example. The theories of how humans learn language. It's good to know about these theories, and then you apply them to your teaching in the classroom on a daily basis. And then students might learn more than they currently do. I don't want to be nasty, but but how do we convince people? How do we convince people that theory has a place, an important place?
That's an excellent question. And I think part of it is we need to stop treating it like it's a luxury or a hobby. Thinking about, and we need to start at very young ages. Too much of our education is focused on high school students, college students, and the elementary school and junior high students are just being exposed to basic knowledge. And the sooner they can be exposed to theoretical thinking and recognizing that thinking and making decisions yields results or consequences, and that they can learn from that and go further. It's almost like thinking about a pilot, that when a pilot takes the seat in the airplane, they just aren't wasting time up in front. They have to have a deep knowledge of the working mechanisms behind the control panel and what each gauge means and how to recognize the signals that something might be broken or off and giving a false or wrong reading. And without that background knowledge, the appreciation of the theory and how it arrived at the conclusion, you can act on false information. And slowing down, taking the time to think, analyze before taking action has such incredible value. I think we've all seen famous leaders who pop off a funny one-liner or respond to a question from the press without thinking. And they had good intentions, but they came out wrong for the lack of forethought in answering the question. What is the expression? Silence is golden.
Silence is golden. Yes, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And 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 on that note, I think we will leave it there. Thank you so much, Deb. I hope you come back where we can philosophize more about things that come out of our conversations. We've touched on a lot today. The fear of the pause, the temptation of the easy answer, and the vital quiet work of building our own models for the world. So if there's one thing that I hope, and I think you'll join me in this, Deb, that our listeners take away, it's this: the system provides the tools, but you are the architect of your own thinking. And because you're the architect of your own thinking, if you liked this episode, because you liked it and you have free will, press the like button. Be the architect of your own future. This channel is a place for those who want to go deeper, and the intersection of language, culture, and power is something that is important for all of us, even though we may think that it is not. I'm Dara Grady, today here with Debra Carlson. Thank you for thinking with us today. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Take care, and thank you, Dara. Wonderful, wonderful discussion. Igualmente.